I've been reading the Wimpy Kid books ever since middle school, and one of the reasons I've continued reading them to this day is because I have an underlying theory that the main character, Greg Heffley, is an emerging sociopath. And a lot of the humor within the series stems from his antisocial behavior. During an AMA on Reddit, I once even proposed this idea to the author himself, Jeff Kinney, but he disagreed and likened Greg more to a Larry David kind of character. While I do respect Kinney's opinion on his character, I'm still more inclined to believe my fan theory, especially after reading the 11-page essay written by my friend Bedhead Bernie on the subject. Bernie points out 14 sociopathic traits that Greg displays, and provides numerous examples of each one in action within the books. Some of these include Greg's grandiose sense of self, his manipulative and conning actions, his lack of empathy, especially for Rowley and Fregley, his consistent juvenile delinquency, and much more. The majority of the plots in the book revolve around Greg trying to obtain fame and popularity, and he'll betray and cut the throats of anybody in order to make these dreams come true. These are the reasons why I love reading the books, even if they have dropped in quality in some of the more recent issues, because Greg's sociopathic tendencies lead to hilarious situations and interactions with the other characters. The reason why I enjoy the original 3 Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies so much is because this sense of preteen sociopathy serving as the catalyst for comedy was carried over quite well, and the cast bringing these situations to life was outstanding. These films were grounded, relatable stories of middle school embarrassment that revolved around a character who would break his best friend's arm and then use it to try to gain popularity. The humor was hardly ever based in slapstick or fart jokes, but rather Greg doing terrible things that would land him in terrible situations, and then watching as Greg does everything in his power to avoid the consequences of his actions. All 3 of these original films were able to do this while at the same time being family films that someone of any age could enjoy. The characters felt genuine. Steve Zahn as Greg's dorky dad and Devin Bostick as Greg's punk rock older brother felt like actual family members that everyone can relate to. All in all, these 3 films were great fun, and I would attest that they make up one of the most consistently funny comedy trilogies of all time. But then that brings us to the new film, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul. This came out 5 years after the previous film with an entirely new cast since the old one grew too old, but it had a lot of potential to be good. The film was directed by David Bowers, the same guy who directed the previous 2 films, and Jeff Kinney himself was one of the writers on the screenplay. Sure, the change in casting would take some getting used to, but even if they were a little good, then this film had great potential for being great. And it's fucking horrible! Instead of having the comedy based in Greg's sociopathic tendencies, the film instead relies far too much on fart jokes, poop humor, and cartoonish slapstick in order to get a laugh out of an audience of 9-year-olds. To give the film credit, the main plot still relies on Greg betraying his family in order to become a star, but this plotline leads to no comedic moments and instead just moves the story along. There were very few times during this film that I actually laughed out loud, whereas in the original trilogy, I was laughing once every few minutes. Where the original 3 films were grounded in reality and felt real, this film ends with a climax of Greg in a boat racing down a hill and then hitting a fence and flying through the air to land in a swimming pool. They took a realistic story of a kid trying to fit in at school and turned it into a wacky live-action cartoon, and I fucking hated it. Finally, I've got to talk about the casting. After watching this film, I became convinced that the original films really struck gold with the cast, because these people were god-awful. Roderick went from a sometimes villainous, sometimes helpful older brother whose passion for music clouded his intellect, to a one-note retarded person who thinks that Uber rides are free. Greg's dad went from a dorky dad who struggles to balance between being a strict father and a fun-loving friend, to a stereotypical dad who needs to focus on his family more than his job. I understand that these issues primarily come from the writing, but the actors were terribly unsuccessful in bringing these characters to life, even as the one-dimensional people that were written in the screenplay. The main saving grace of the cast was Greg's younger brother Manny, who made the end of the movie pretty amazing. But it's sad when a 4-year-old is the best actor in the film. Listen up, Wimpy Kid people. It's not too late to fix this shit. You had a chance with the new cast, and you fucked it up by creating a story too reliant on farting and pooping for comedic value rather than Greg getting himself into comedic situations through his own vanity. Add a few more dimensions to the characters, and maybe the actors will find a way to shine through and prove that they can live up to what the original cast provided. And Jeff Kinney, you gotta fucking admit that Greg is a sociopath. Bedhead Bernie wrote a whole thesis about this shit, man. You gotta take a look.